review, the district creation, bonding process doesn't apply here. Neither is funding office. Well, funding office and commitments does, because in this project, the block grant has to be approved by CWC in New York City. Final design development, final design, permit applications, design approval, land acquisitions, bidding, construction, and then project completion. So this little outline is the study status. And right away, first thing, determine existing wastewater needs in Hamlet. So with your input, and hopefully the Hamlet people's input, we'll talk about what people understand the needs to be. We'll follow up with a survey by letter of the people that are in the area. We determine a planning area. We'll make the planning area whatever you want it to be within reason. Outside that, that's the area we'll survey. We do what we call a windshield survey, where we go out in the field and check and see what kind of businesses and apartments and homes and so on. We need that information to develop the wastewater generation. So you can see that, determine the service area, determine the estimated wastewater generation and quality. For a factory, we'd have to be concerned about what kind of sewage they produce. Then we consider the alternatives for managing the wastewater. As I outlined, our bias is to start look at the simplest, see if it'll work, move on, see if that will work. So we'll recommend a method, and we'll estimate the costs, and we'll be producing a preliminary engineer's report. That's the work that you would be approving to go forward with if you decide to agree to work on the project with CWC. As I said, there's these other opportunities to, these other forks in the road where you make a decision. Project's 100% funded by CWC. All the way through construction, operation, maintenance would be by agreement with New York City under operation maintenance agreement. Most of the communities get about 90% of cost subsidy for their operation maintenance costs. And just like with the other programs we've heard about, $100 a household is the base rate, and it goes up with inflation every 3 years.
One thing I just wanted to add was that the fact that CWC, we have funding currently on hand to fund the study phase. And then the block grant, after the preliminary engineer's report is completed by Lamont and approved by the town, accepted by the town and the city and CWC, that would establish a block grant, which DEP also has to approve. And then the block grant funds would be used to pay for the pre-construction and construction phases of the project. So that's a separate pot of money solely for engineering and construction costs, the block grant. But CWC right now, with our admin fund, have monies available. If the town chooses to pursue and complete the study phase, we have those monies on hand, ready to fund it.
Mr. Lamont, I had a question. You know, say when you go around and say you do your windshield book, you look around the community and you see that, oh, you know, we have a need, you know, for the locals and, you know, for the residents, and you build the sewer and you put it in. And like 3 or 4 years from now, say the old consolidated building, somebody buys it and wants to put a small factory or put something in there that's gonna generate more waste. Will the system be designed to take on something a little bigger, or is there any leeway there with it? I guess I'm trying to ask you, say, oh, well, okay, we can put like a small little factory in there, or...
Well, the program allows and sort of requires that you budget in your wastewater projections, the flow projections, 10% growth.
Oh, okay.
But it also, there's really more than that. So as I said, EFC has a, 22,750, I think was their gallons per day, their flow prediction. But they added the 10% and rounded it up to 26,000. So They
And
were
that is-
planning for 4,000, under 4,000.
I was just gonna, and that is language in the watershed memorandum of agreement under the NIP and this community wastewater programs that there be 10% growth factor added to each of the communities that participate in the program for that reason.
But there's also more extra capacity than that because of the way we're required to estimate the wastewater flow. We're required to figure by the DEC requirements to figure 100 gallons per person per day. And so far, none of these communities has come anywhere near 100 gallons per person per day. As an example off the top of my head, I think Bloomville, for example, is designed for 30,000 gallons a day, which is in the ballpark of your community. They're getting less than 10. So there's because we're required to plan for 100 gallons a person per day, it turns out to be a lot of room. Rural people don't use 100 gallons a day, you know. But that's just the nature of the beast. Now, so there should be a fair amount of flow capacity left, but if you have a system that can handle 26,000 gallons a day, even if you have 2/3 of that available, that's not a lot of flow available for a factory or something, you know. You need a couple car washes and a few restaurants and you use a lot of that up.
Yeah, I'm not thinking
But-
like ideas.
The other thing is, this system will be most likely designed for regular residential household waste, because doesn't appear to be a lot of odd wastes up there in Shandaken. So if the developer, the development you're talking about, say we're a pill factory or something, for example, they may have a wastewater that is not compatible with your system. Your sewer use law would require them then, assuming the flow volume was low enough from the place, would require them to pre-treat their sewage to the point where your system could handle it. Of course, they would also have the other option of building their own wastewater handling and management system.
I have a question. With limited land being available here in Shandaken, are you going to be fluid enough to be able to find the right site that you need and procure it with land? Because that's the question I have. I mean, it all determines if you have the right site to do what you need to do, I assume.
Yeah, absolutely, that's the most critical issue, especially for the cheaper, simpler solutions like leach fields, community leach field. You have to have a very specific requirements for a site like that. A wastewater treatment plant's a little easier to site because all the treatment's right in the building. So you can even put them in the floodplain if you raise them up enough and so on. But if you're going to get a system that requires the right soils and the right topography and the right distance from the streams and so on, it's not easy to find. And that is the most critical and most difficult part of the process.
A follow-up to Peg's question, the floodplain, floodway maps redone by FEMA. Has that been taken into account here?
Well, we haven't started our study. When this was done, that was before the revision. I mean, that was back in 2000. And I can tell you that a part of Site A is in the floodplain, but not all of it, I don't think.
Under the new maps, it's all.
Yeah, it's all in, yeah.
It's still red. Actually, Nate and I had a preliminary conversation a couple of years ago concerning leaching and the availability of space, and recognizing we may not have the space to do what's proposed, especially on that site. And again, I'm going to say from my perspective, and the board can chime in as well, that recognizing that site alongside 28, that if there was future development, kind of want to preserve that for the hamlet, for the development of the hamlet. To lose 2-3 parcels as it's prescribed here, possibly, or use of those, would be detrimental to the landowners as well as the hamlet itself, could be. I also know that the one gentleman that owns part of the parcel that's being described here has done improvements on the parcel, trying to possibly do something, build something with that site.
And this is by the old consolidated?
Yeah, it's by Consolidated.
It was a field right there. Yeah.
Yeah, at that point.
Between Consolidated and Gary's.
Yeah.
Yeah, at that point, a few years ago, when we had those discussions, because there was a landowner of this lot, the majority of Site A, it's about a 40-acre lot. Back then, there was only about an acre right here on Site A, roughly where this is right here. About an acre that was outside of that 40-acre property. Just 1 acre was outside the 100-year floodplain at that time. But now, and those latest FEMA floodplain maps, have they been adopted by the town?
No. And actually, Shandaken is the one area that's holding it up. I got an email from Phil Escaley with the DRP, with the flood maps, and, because I want to know, we were supposed to have a timeline of adoption. He said that we're looking at the flows because of things we described on the ground during Irene that didn't look right to what they had in the mapping. So they went to 2D modeling, and they found a correction to be made. So we're going to look more in depth at the flood mapping and shit we can handle. But
That would definitely be.
it's tough, it's really just the open land. Where is the open land available in the area to do this? So it's going to be, we talked about the ball field being a possibility, or Glenbrook Park. So.
Well, that's a real critical issue. It's probably the most difficult part of the whole process is to find a suitable site. And then you have to hopefully find one that's available for purchase. And, but part of the preliminary engineer's report is to identify potential sites and then study them and then hopefully get what we call access agreements and willing seller indications so we can go on site, look at the soils and so on. It may be that there is an adequate site.
Septic maintenance district, from what I understand, I think it was the one in Delancey, like premier example of it. But correct me if I'm wrong, the DEP provides you like a lump sum of money to do the maintenance on it. The town board basically would be the overseer of,
That's right.
of the maintenance of the district. But from what I understood, at Delancey, they've been able to almost replace, if not all, almost all of the septics within the area, and have done improvements on some others that weren't even in failure, but they predicted they were gonna, and doing pump outs, periodic pump outs for a certain, like a number of them each year,
Yeah,
so that way they can maintain it better and still flush with cash
Right.
from the DEP. So.
Well, that was too, the Delancey Septic Maintenance District, that was completed under the CWC Community Wastewater Management Program, as Henry mentioned, with funding through the program contract with the City of New York. But the CWC, had $2.2 million available. Delancey was listed as one of the 22 communities. Lamont Engineers conducted the preliminary engineer's report. There were a lot of things in Delancey that were favorable for a septic maintenance district. Very broad, flat floodplain, pretty good sized lots, good soil. There's even a big component that lets us create a septic maintenance district is a municipal water system. Because when you have on-site wells for these commercial buildings and homes, you have to meet proper separation distances for the septic between the well and the septic tank and the well, streams, and in the absorption field. So Delancey had a septic maintenance district. The district was established, about 60 properties in the district. CWC staff, including myself at the time, this was in 2006, we conducted inspections of all the septic systems in that community. We placed them into 3 different categories: failing, likely to fail, or functioning. The initial round of inspections revealed that 16 of those systems were indeed failing. The town agreed in the following year, in 2007, with program funds, replaced 17 septic systems, and the remaining $1.5 million after those systems were designed and installed, $1.5 million from CWC was given to the town of Hamden as an endowment to be solely used for the operation and maintenance of those systems in that district. And to this day, every single year, CWC staff, our septic program for the town of Hamden, has conducted septic inspections in that hamlet. And they've replaced about one system a year since 2007, and as of this fall, they plan to replace 3 more systems. So not all of them have been replaced, but they do have a significant amount of money in order to operate and maintain that maintenance district.
Now, I heard you saying about the $100. Would that still be a requirement of the septic maintenance district that we have a fee?
No, it's not.
There's no fee.
There's no fee.
Now, we're probably getting beyond where we are tonight with the preliminary, but is it the possibility?
Judy brings up a good point. It's possible because other than providing the inspection services, CWC is not really involved with that. The town does not charge a user fee, $100 per year fee, as Mary had mentioned. But Judy brings up a good point. I think the town itself might have set up some sort of way to bill the users to create a capital fund. Yes.
Because eventually,
Yeah.
That was their decision to make.
That was a town-based decision.
They didn't have to do that. They didn't want to.
So again, I'm going to presume, again, knowing the size of these lots, and it's my stomping grounds from growing up, so I'm familiar with a lot of the houses and the spaces and the lots. So if a community septic is there a possibility of doing something along the lines of saying, a clustering of pre-treatment to go into a smaller finalized treatment system? Or, again, I'm just throwing everything out there to make sure we cover all bases of what we'd like to see looked at. Even if it's going to be clustering of certain communities right within themselves, that they can coordinate amongst 4 or 5 neighbors to say, we're going to work together and create our own septic that we'll all share.
Well, there are some vacant lots scattered throughout the community, right?
But doesn't that cause problems with real estate, with reselling?
Yeah.
Because banks do not like to see properties being shared, septics or wells.
Well,
Would they feel that way
Wells are
if it
different.
was managed by the town,
wells are different. With the septic, it would be akin to a sewer system. You're on a basic sewer system, you're still sharing the cost with your neighbors essentially.
Yes, a smaller version
So
of
it's just a
it.
smaller
Yeah.
version of
Right.
that,
Look at it differently.
but much more
Yeah.
condensed.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
no? Yeah, I think the town might have to acquire the land, or have an easement for the land, or they'd have to,
it'd be similar to a common driveway or a
Right.
common road.
Or they-
that we
you
share
would have-
plowing and so on and so on.
you would have to sponsor some kind of written agreements. But, that's really the difference between not doing anything in a septic maintenance district is that you have the town government taking the management function and making sure it's proactive, and septic tanks get pumped out every 3 years or so, so on.
Residents are here.
One option for collection is what we call a small diameter gravity sewer, where there's a septic tank on each lot. So that part of the treatment stays on site, and then you can go to there can be 5 or 6 clusters.
That's similar, forget the place many years ago, we went out to this presentation, Columbia. Hillsdale. That's what they did.
Yeah.
They kept their septics in the ground and pumped just basically gray water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've got, we did that kind of collection system in Ashland, but it goes through a wastewater plant. It's a sand filtration wastewater plant. We did that kind of collection system in Trout Creek. That goes to 3 separate community septic systems. And that type of collection system is going to be used in Lexington, but that goes to one site. And there's a pre-treatment facility before, and then all the wastewater's in a big leach field.
Just a question on that, over the last 10 years or so, and, in my house, I got 5 people and they put a certain size system in there. Over the last 10 years or so, there's been strides, of course, in technology on these leaching systems and stuff. Has the CWC kept up with that? I mean, what would be the average size today that you'd need for a on-site residential system?
Well, that's certainly, the CWC residential septic rehabilitation and replacement program is our most popular program. Got 5 staff, a part of that program. I would say that certainly it varies based on the site. The number of bedrooms is a large driver as to what type of system, what the size would be. But all we have to do with every single septic system that's installed or designed, you have to conduct deep soil test pits to determine the soil type there on that site. You have to conduct perk tests to determine the perk rate of that soil, lot size, separation from water courses. But I think on average right now, under that program, the average cost to replace an average system is about $14,000. That's design and construction.
What would be the average size? And if you're talking about sites here with different lots and things like that, what would be the average size, say, for a 3-bedroom house?
Well, the septic tank is based on the number of bedrooms, and again, the type of soil and the number of bedrooms and the gallons per day determine the size of the leach field. Are you looking for how many square feet for the average
Say
system?
like
1,000 gallons.
60 by, you need a field 60 by 40 for 5, or like I said, some of this technology that came out from down, some of these, and I don't have the knowledge in them, but just what we're shown, some of them were very extremely small for a 2-bedroom house.
Some leach fields?
Yeah.
Yeah, they can be, again, they vary. I don't have any figures that I can provide as far as the square footage or how big the systems are in a geographic area. But again, it just really it's based on the number of bedrooms and the soil type. And whether, pre-treatment is certainly an option, but in a lot of cases, in the New York City watershed right now, even if you do pre-treat with some sort of enhanced technology, peat, sand, some sort of geotextile or mechanical type of pump station or chamber pre-treatment unit, the City of New York will not allow a reduction in the leach field. Will not allow it.
No, it gets to DEP is not waiving from the 10 states.
Correct.
And we've heard that from Jim Graff multiple times.
That's correct.
So they haven't shrunk it down, even though, like you said, technology's gotten better. We asked this back many years ago in Fitzhillsdale, which is perfect.
Sure, yeah.
Thing where, they're pre-treating and then they're just sending gray water, and they were able to reduce their leach field size by 2/3 because they worked with the watershed, Columbia, whatever watershed it is up there, and they allowed it, but DEP will not budge.
Yeah, the water.
And part of that is due to the EPA requirements. That's what their claim is.
Now, the place that I think they vary some is an existing lot of an existing house. At least under rehab of systems, there's only so much room. And, they don't require people to buy land, do they, under the septic program?
No, we just do the very best we can, given
Do
that.
the best you can.
But that's more towards trying to meet the best you can on that given site to meet the proper separation distances from wells and wetlands water courses, not so much the absorption field size.
Anyway, one of the methods we use in the septic limitations map is we deduce for the soils you have here, what size the lot needs to be to have the separation distance and to have the up to standard leach field for a typical family on that particular kind of soil. So it'll evolve, an answer will evolve out of the study.
So we'll take the resolution under consideration for our November 5th meeting.
November 5th, okay.
That's our meeting.
Great. I've also provided you 2 hard copies of the proposed participating community agreement. By your request, I'll send over an electronic copy.
I'll have the town attorney look at it. As usual, we'll go through the motion. See what there's You guys get paid a lot of money, so I'm sure we'll find something.
You folks want copies of this? It's a EFC study from 2000. It will be reproduced in the preliminary engineer's report. So you'll see it, and it'll be referred to along the way. Change your mind, I don't know. My card's in the packet there. If you have any questions, please feel free to call me. I'll talk to you.
Thank you.
Thanks very
Thank you,
much.
folks.
Very good questions.
Thank you.
Be in touch.
And, Trayvon, could you just have Kimberly tomorrow, shoot me, I sent her an email on the stormwater.
Okay, yeah.
And since, I said Dan O'Connor. and
One more note, Lamont. We're gonna do this November 5th. If we could get a determination, at least a general determination on the lines of where this district is going to be, so residents know if they're gonna be affected or not. When they have a question of coming here or not, if they're not gonna be in the water district.
Well, that's what this will move into, to find out, for us to describe and say, we'd like to extend here or not be here.
We can leave a map. Why don't we do that? Do you want us to come to the meeting? Well, why don't we leave
That
this
much
map?
interest tonight, I would say, there's probably not gonna be a whole lot more.
Anyway, the district evolves out of the study, the district boundaries. And it will need your input, and if you can get it, the input of the people. So I'd like to leave one of these maps here in case somebody comes. It gives them an idea where we're starting. But it's not etched in stone. We need to talk about it.
We'll put it with the 15 other maps I'm supposed to have. Put them on the wall. I got all the room here. Two big things like that for the Pine Hill Sewer extension going on.
Right, yeah.
All right, thank you, folks.
All right,
All
great.
right, thank you.
Thanks for having
See you
us.
again.
And, with that, I'll hang for a minute. There was a request to go to executive session or something. With that, I will close the regular meeting. I'll make a motion to close the regular meeting.
I'll make a
Go to
motion.
executive session. All in favor?
It's on the personnel.
Personnel.